Good afternoon and welcome to our webinar, The Art and Science Behind a Great Customer Plan, powered by Purchase Predictor. Before we get going, we've got a great session for you. There's just a small amount of housekeeping. Throughout the webinar, there'll be a series of polls which we'll ask you to participate in so we can get some audience engagement and start to better understand some of the challenges you're feeling in market. There's an opportunity to use social media and the hashtag PurchasePredictor19. If you want to engage and give us some feedback, we'd really welcome your comments. And also you can pose questions in the chat box available on the right-hand side. We'll save your questions up for the Q&A at the end and make sure we cover off as many of those as possible. Finally, we are recording the session so you can access the content at a later date and also share with colleagues and friends. So, let me introduce myself. My name is Martin Corcoran, and I'm the Managing Director of the Performance Consulting team here at Summit. I'll also be your host and your MC for the day. And alongside me, I've got Darren Wright.
Yeah, I'm Darren. I'm the Head of Customer Analytics at Summit, and I'm also the Product Owner for Purchase Predictor.
So, if we have a quick overview of our agenda, we're going to have a quick run through of the objectives of today. Hopefully it's practical and innovative for you. We're then going to hand over to Ricky Wilson and talk about some of his experiences of customer planning while at M&S. We'll then go into the deep dive with Purchase Predictor and understand how that can support the customer plan. We've got some examples of great planning to share with you and some examples of innovation. And we'll finish with a Q&A session for the whole team here. So, in terms of our objectives today, we looked at the phrase, be stubborn about your goals and flexible about your methods, and it seemed to really resonate with us. Within retail, we're all looking to achieve similar objectives. We all want top-line growth, we all want to maximize our margins, and we all want a return on investment. But how we get there, we can get there in different ways, and it's going to be different by people, by business, by vertical, and by industry. So it's not a one-stop shop for customer planning. The idea is we'll be able to give you some innovation and some experience and hopefully some really practical tips for you to take away today. Before we get going, I just want to give you a really brief understanding of who Summit are as the parent company of Purchase Predictor. So we are 18 years in e-commerce as practitioners and insight consultants. We have 4 offices across Yorkshire, Warwick, Prague and London, supporting 200 Summiteers who all specialise in retail. Those 200 Summiteers are servicing 300 clients across the globe. And we are privately owned by retail expert firm TCC Global. And we're really pleased to have Ricky Wilson with us here today. Ricky's vast experience from Marks and Spencer's and across the retail industry, and he's here to give us some of those tips and inside information on those experiences. So I'll hand over to Ricky now.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Ricky. I spent over 30 years at M&S, as you heard, nearly 20 of which were within the e-com business and was one of the founding members there. During that time, I was fortunate enough to head up all aspects of the online business, most recently trading and merchandising for clothing and home. I'm now at Pandora Jewelry, helping them with their digital transformation with a specific focus on commercial management and helping them to shift more gear. So today, I'm going to take an example of one of M&S's most important campaigns to illustrate some of the challenges we faced and the actions we took. The Summit team will then explain how Purchase Predictor can be fundamental in helping businesses to do something similar. Back to school is a bit of a misnomer. It conjures up the idea of hazy, lazy summer days playing football with your mates before being dragged to M&S to get your new uniform the week before it's time to start the new term. In reality, the campaign lasted far longer, indeed well before the kids have even broken up for the summer holidays, around the middle of June. It's a big deal for M&S Kidswear, given that we hugely over-index in that category. And e-commerce represents a huge proportion of total M&S schoolwear sales, with around 40% of all schoolwear sales happening online. Online share for M&S in schoolwear is around 30%, whereas for kids' daywear, it would be under 5%. And so as such, back to school is absolutely fundamental for us being able to achieve our annual goals. So with those numbers, you'd be forgiven for thinking we were doing a pretty decent job, but I had lingering doubts over whether or not we were really maximising the potential of the campaign throughout all of the weeks that it ran for. So firstly, I just wanted to talk about getting your fair share, also known as feed the beast. Getting to the sorts of numbers I've talked about can't be achieved without great stock support, and that isn't always easy to make happen. Schoolwear is a massive volume, spiky campaign, which is very different from most product SKUs within M&S. Stocking the store is still primarily driven by space to fill, as the rate of sale of a SKU in M&S is low, on average less than 1 unit of a size colour per store per month, whereas online can sell over 1,000 gingham dresses in a day. It's a totally different beast. And so ensuring that the sales demand curve is used and believed is key to getting stock ahead of the campaign starting. But it's also vital for the supply chain. Moving massive quantities of units through the network, receiving them into the warehouse, and putting them away where they can be quickly retrieved is also important. And this means grabbing a fair share of transport, storage, warehouse resource in the weeks leading up to the campaign. And so for us, it was fundamental to have a demand curve that wasn't only compelling enough to convince doubters, but it was detailed enough for all of our teams to take action upon. The next point is around investing margin. I mentioned that the campaign spans a number of weeks. Broadly, the historic shape of the campaign was around half of sales happening before the schools broke up in mid-July, and around half of the sales during the school holidays themselves. But it never sat particularly comfortably with me. Instinctively, it felt that the last couple of weeks of the campaigns were softer than I might have otherwise expected. For a few reasons. Firstly, that shape was forced by M&S. In the first half of the campaign, we run an early bird offer, giving 20% off to customers. It's a good thing. Get customers to commit early so they buy from us rather than from somebody else. A side effect of this, though, was to spend a larger proportion of the marketing budget during this phase of the campaign, both to capitalise on the promotion, but also to land the M&S back-to-school proposition for the season, which left us a little light of marketing budget later in the campaign. In addition, our merchandising teams are also cautious as September approached to ensure that we didn't end the campaign with a DC full of stock and store sales floors looking light. So throughout August, they would divert replenishment of stock to stores as opposed to the e-com DC. This led to sellouts on some key items during August. And if a customer can't buy their trousers online from you, then they're going to have to go to a store to get those. They may well then go and get the rest of their purchases from elsewhere as well. Missing a £10 pair of trousers can impact £70 worth of other schoolwear items. So the combined impact of those two things was deflate the sales potential in the final couple of weeks towards the campaign. The way we got around that was not to just use our sales numbers to produce our demand curve, because they were self-fulfilling. We used other customer data, such as Google searches by day, to get a sense of when the customer was naturally wanting to shop that category and to identify the weeks that we were under-indexing. In terms of reacting fast, much of back to school is pretty predictable. Schools don't change their uniforms every year, so colour mix is pretty consistent, and ditto the number of pupils in each year, so sizing is also predictable. What's less predictable is when customers will shop. Sticking with schoolwear, although a little earlier in the year, the first full week of sun leads to a huge uplift in schoolwear sales, often 5 times the previous week, which is triggered by parents going out to buy gingham dresses and shorts. You can't predict the British weather, but you can predict the customer reaction to it. So for us, it was about being ready with creative and marketing messages to celebrate the warmer weather, about having stock in ahead of time to sell, but not in a deep storage area of the warehouse. And it was about having enough resource in the warehouse to get those dresses and shorts out of the DC the day they were ordered, as 70% of our orders were for next day delivery. So it's all about having things ready to go. Know it will happen and what will trigger you to enact your plans. For us, it was a full week of sunny days and the first jump in daily sales of gingham dresses. In terms of influence in the rest of the business, our ability to influence others really comes down to how credible we are as individuals. And that credibility relates to building trust through being good at what we do, doing what we say that we're going to do, and having the right intentions. But it's also important to put yourself in the shoes of the person you're trying to influence, what matters for them and what they may have to compromise on in order to help you. One example I shared with the Summit team that they were a little surprised at was relating to setting annual sales plans. The reality is that some people don't want lots of evidence to set an ambitious plan, because the lower the sales plan, the better chance they have of beating it, and therefore triggering performance awards. But they do want to know how you are going to beat your plan they agree with you. And consistently beating expectations, in my experience, is the very best way to build credibility and trust with others. I think, in summary, it's about picking your battles, and more than that, picking your moment. For us, it was about making sure that we fed into the campaign PIRs and lesson learned processes that run within the business in order that well ahead of those conversations, our data could be taken into account. Sometimes you just have to play the longer game. Fortunately, it all played out well for you. We smashed it in the last couple of weeks due to the support we got from so many others. The back-to-school campaign sales are our biggest ever, and we grew share yet again. Importantly, our customers noted that availability had improved, and we had fewer contacts citing unavailability as a reason for not purchasing. And our teams had a better time because they weren't scrabbling around madly looking for stock, and equally, they weren't defending poor trading numbers. It really does help generate a wave of feel-good for those people involved. Success does indeed have many parents, and that's how it should be. We can't do anything on our own, and it's more fun as part of a team anyway. So there's some of the challenges we faced. I'm now going to hand back to Martin, who's going to run a poll to get an understanding on the challenges you have in your own organisations. Thanks very much.
So, thanks for that, Ricky. Absolutely excellent, really insightful. For our audience out there, which one of these challenges is most common for you? Getting your fair share of business investment, investing margin into promotional discounts, reacting fast to unplanned surges in demand, or influencing key stakeholders in your business? If everyone can take the time to vote now and then hit the submit button, we'll get an idea as to the audience challenges. Thankfully, we won't be returning to that holding music that you had previously. Wow. So there are two clear winners in terms of the poll. So getting your fair share of business investment received 50% of the vote, as well as reacting fast to unplanned surges in demand, which is really, really indicative given there's such a large amount of people on the call. Excellent. So now's the opportunity to deep dive into Purchase Predictor, which is Summit's proprietary planning platform. Purchase Predictor has been developed in line with retailers all over the globe, helping commercial-facing functions answer everyday, real-world questions, such as, how much budget should I spend over which event? Which products should I support? And which products should I support with feature space and dual sighting? How can I win more manufacturer investment? What categories and products do customers really want with this event? How should I phase my marketing budget across this event? And how and when can I make more money, which is the most important question. So our retail intelligence platform, Purchase Predictor, enables you to review thousands of products to identify the most profitable one in your portfolio. Forecast the size of your customer events, allocating budget for the greatest returns. Predict seasonal trends in your categories to uncover new journeys and missions that you didn't even know existed. And size your sales opportunities to pinpoint your revenue left on the table. And here at Summit, we've developed a proprietary methodology which we've coined as sales headroom. And fundamentally, that means the money that you as a retailer are leaving on the table and could be earning. So right now, I'm going to hand you over to Darren, who's going to give you a more in-depth view of the platform and also demo some of the different modules.
Great, thanks, Martin. Yeah, so firstly, just kind of what's the secret sauce behind the Purchase Predictor platform? As Martin suggested, these are methodologies that we've developed over a number of years through answering some of those questions for some great retailers. And what's driving it is what we think is quite a unique data set, which primarily is made up of online search data, which we use as a proxy for customer demand. And we're going to touch on that theme of demand, and we already have done a couple of times, but what do we actually mean by that? Well, it's an understanding of how many customers there are in the market at any given time for a particular product or category. And that helps us identify what products and when we should be promoting them. But to make that far more powerful, if you overlay retailers' own sales data, it allows you not just to understand when to promote things, but also the size of different opportunities, which is really crucial in that prioritization in terms of where you should be investing your resources. And once we've pulled that data set together, we hand it over to our data scientists, and they apply a number of different methods to start to extract some of the meaning and some of the actionable insights from that data, whether that's through forecasting what we think is going to happen, or whether it's using clustering to group together different products into themes and missions that have similar behavioural characteristics. So we're going to jump into a bit of a demo of the platform now. So you should be able to see the landing page coming up of Purchase Predictor. And it's made up of several different retail verticals. There's 4 on show here, but more available. We're going to focus for this demo specifically on health and beauty. And there we can see our seasonal demand curve for the total health and beauty category. We can see that it's peaking at the end of November. It's the major peak. There's also a couple of smaller peaks in March and January, which is great to see at a total category level. But we can drill down, and this is, again, one of the real insights. Yeah, so guys, if you can't see the video, you need to head to the media player. But yeah, we're going to see all the different products within the cosmetics subcategory and start to see there's quite a bit of difference, even compared to the category average. Perfume there, growing quite significantly in Q4, 150% growth in the month leading up to November. Or skincare, which peaks in March around Mother's Day. And then finally, there's that big peak for the green line, which is eye makeup, which happens around Halloween. So to recap, we use seasonal demand to identify peaks in demand and align trading and marketing activity accordingly. We can go down to and see really granular product data that can inform customer-centric plans. And practically you can then start to inform, for a particular category of product, when should I be putting that on promotion? When should I be utilising feature space in store? The skincare example that we briefly touched on is actually a real-life example that we used with a retailer, where they use that to inform what their hero product should be for their Mother's Day events. So our next module we're going to look at, that Martin has already alluded to, is our Headroom module. Which again allows us to really start to size the opportunity and identify where we should be focusing our efforts. So our Headroom module here, we can see we've got, rather than just having the demand plotted, which is the blue line, we've also got revenue plotted in green. And where we can see that there's gaps between the two, that's where we think we've identified some incremental sales opportunities. Again, to uncover those opportunities, we need to start to drill down through the hierarchy. We're going to look at kitchen appliances. And then within kitchen appliances, we're going to have a quick look at a particular product, and we're going to have a look at bread makers. And we can see that demand and revenue pretty closely aligned throughout the year. There's where the peaks are in the same places, the troughs are in the same places, so not many tall towers at the bottom in terms of incremental opportunities. Whoever planned bread makers category did that one spot on. However, we have a look at another category, we're going to have a look at ice cream makers. It's a very different story. We can see there's demand, there's revenues peaking in January, And whilst there's a bit of an uptick in the peak summertime, it's nowhere near as big as the peak in demand. So hence we see lots of big towers at the bottom, indicating significant potential revenue opportunities and money left on the table. Again, recapping on sales headroom, we review last year's sales, align that to the demand, and identify where there are gaps and opportunities. We can pinpoint it to the exact week that opportunity is there, and off the back of that, there's various things it can inform, whether that's getting stock into store sooner, whether it's shifting promotions to the right weeks, or whether it's adjusting your content to promote the right products at the right time. Thinking again about our annual planning, an alternative way of approaching that is to think about seasonal events. So we're going to show you our event module now. There's two potential options. There's the calendar view, or we can just compare all of the events that are available to us. And we can see here, across all verticals, Black Friday, unsurprisingly, represents the biggest opportunity. The grey bar is your total sales, and the green represents the potential for sales headroom opportunities. If we filter and look at a different retail sector, we look at sporting goods, it's a very different story. So daylight savings, or when the clocks go forward, as they have done just now in the UK, represents a slight change in behaviour for sporting goods and customers heading outside, more outdoor activity, and therefore represents a significant opportunity for the sporting goods retailers. So again, thinking about your annual planning, being able to prioritise events and choose where you're going to invest your time in, thinking about your annual marketing budget, choosing which events you want to focus on, and being able to drill down and build a plan around those events, identifying hero products. And that sporting example, again, thinking about heading into summertime, the change of the seasons and the changing focus of customers, and more marketing activity, TV and things like that, supporting that. Another key data point when it comes to annual planning is identifying potential areas for growth. And we have what we call our forecast module.
Relative to the previous year. We're focusing on home and garden for this particular example. And we can see there's a whole bunch of different subcategories that we can track the demand for. Some that we're going to see quite a lot of growth, and some where we're actually thinking that we might see a decline in customer interest over the next year. But just to make it a bit more manageable, I'm going to filter and look at one category in particular, the lawn and garden category. These are just 4 subcategories. Water and irrigation at the top there, with 36% growth, and that growth is across both the product groups. And if we look at the graph at the bottom, where the green line represents the forecast for the next year, we can see most of that growth is going to come in the peak summer months. And perhaps in the UK, we had a really hot summer last year, so it could be related to people being caught out by that last year and deciding to potentially invest more money this time around. If we look at a different category, there's a bit more variance in there, variability in the forecasts, with some categories expected to decline, like hedge trimmers, but lawnmowers expected to grow, although it's a lot harder for us to nail down where the growth might come for lawnmowers. This is obviously going to be quite heavily driven by the weather, and that was touched on by Ricky earlier, and it's actually a module that we've got in development at the moment to start to overlay the impact of weather on customer demand. So using forecasting as part of your demand planning and your annual planning, being able to identify customer trends, being able to inform stock and annual plans, and understanding what customers are going to want and need, but also being able to overlay an understanding of how much variability is in that data and how reliable those trends are. We already touched on our Headroom module and being able to drill down and look at potential headroom for individual products. But again, kind of thinking about your annual plan, being able to identify which of those opportunities are greatest is going to be really helpful, which is what this view does. So we've got within sporting goods all of the categories within sporting goods ranked in terms of the incremental headroom opportunities. And we can see at the top, camping has got the biggest opportunity. And then again, for being able to break that down at a real granular product level, example of sleeping bags there with a peak at the beginning of the summer, but then a peak later in the summer that they're missing out on and leaving sales on the table. If I'm interested in a particular category, I can use the highlight function and again call out and investigate specific products. Looks like there's some potential for growth in yoga, especially around January where people are on a bit of a health kick. So again, hopefully you can see there's some pretty practical uses there in terms of sizing your opportunity. Again, annual plan, pick out your 4 or 5 best opportunities and build a plan around that. If you're able to understand what the actual potential headroom is, and you know what you're going to be, what the additional investment you're going to be able to make as well, it makes making a business case and understanding the potential ROI really easy. And one final view. We're going to, as well as taking a top-down approach where we look at the year as a whole and then start to pick out different details within that, we're going to look at a slightly different approach, a bottom-up approach. So what we've done here is we've plotted for every week where we think the most important things to focus on are. We've used our clustering methodology to identify different missions. And each of these bubbles represents a different mission. The size of the bubble represents the total sales opportunity. We've plotted total demand on the y-axis against the growth in demand versus the previous week on the x-axis. And the green line here, anything above that line is what we're saying should be a focus because we know it's growing and we know it's at the peak of its demand. It should definitely be a focus for you in that particular week. So we skip forward to a more practical time frame and we can see, let's look at next week commencing the 7th of April. We've got home baking and spring clean as the key focus categories, and they should definitely be promoted next week. We can also see actually there's this mission on the right hand side, which is our barbecue mission, which isn't at its peak in demand, but it's definitely growing at the moment. And we bring that forward a week and we can see there's a bit of a peak and it should be a focus in mid-April. Towards the end of the month, it drops below our green line and shouldn't necessarily be a focus in store. But then when we get to the holiday weekend, the first weekend in May, we can see both barbecue and spring garden should definitely be the focus heading into that holiday weekend. If we're interested in what the focus should be within that mission, we can have a look and see there's the different categories within there all following a similar trend and drill down and see what the potential hero product should be as part of that mission. So that's the last of the demos. Again, just a slightly different approach, whether you want to go top down and start with a high level view, or whether you want to build up from week on week and understand what's most important to customers in a given week. It's got the flexibility in there to do both. You've had a good look at what the platform can do, and specifically around identifying incremental sales opportunities. We certainly think we're pretty good at doing it, but we're curious to know how much headroom and sales you're leaving behind at the moment. So that's going to be our next poll question. I'm going to hand back to Martin. He's going to talk you through that.
Yes, thanks for that, Darren. Extremely detailed and hopefully really practical in terms of being able to tell you what category, what products, in what week, to what value. So hopefully it should be really practical in terms of helping you build that bottom-up plan and also supporting it with broader business from top down. Okay, so we're on to another poll. So in your experience, what percentage of sales are you or your retail partners leaving on the table? So is it 0%, in which case we think we're doing a great job and we're grabbing every possible sale in the market? 1 to 5%, 6 to 10%, or 10% or more? If you can vote and then submit your answer now. So we'll just totting up the answers as everyone votes. Just give you a couple more seconds in case you're giving it a really, really good think. Okay, so the answers are in, and it's an even split between 1 to 5%, or 10% or more, which received 35% of the vote. Interestingly enough, there's no retailer or partner of a retailer out there who thinks they are grabbing absolutely their fair share and leaving nothing on the table. So hopefully good evidence that there's room for us all to improve. Okay, So we're actually going to go into some case studies now and start to think practically around how we can use Purchase Predictor and everything you've learned today to understand how to build a really practical and really innovative and engaging customer plan. So we work with Argos, who are a multi-channel retailer here in the UK. We worked with them to build their 2019-2020 customer plan. And we applied all the different modules that you've just been taken through there with Darren across payday, to understand the impact of payday on their business and which categories are most important, promotions and promotional effectiveness, the impact of weather, and being able to understand the incrementality of warm weather, wet weather, and cold weather, the impact of Easter moving, so whether it be an early Easter or a late Easter, which products should we be focusing on and what's the value of that, macro events such as the World Cup, and school holidays. We had a bit of a taster of that via Ricky's back to school example, but how we maximise those school holidays and from the breaking up period and going on summer holidays all the way to going back to school and everything you need. And throughout the course of that, we were able to identify £50 million of incremental sales opportunity. Our next example is with an Australian department store called Big W. And interestingly enough, Big W are 98% of their sales occur through the store, with only 2% of the sales online. So they're taking the digital data and informing offline decisions, store-based decisions. And we focused on a specific event with Big W, and that was back to school. And we were able to identify more than $7 million of headroom opportunity across all their commercial functions. So the first example is $1.8 million of headroom opportunity across the rucksacks and bags category. There was an early surge in demand aligned to Christmas gifting that Big W hadn't been aware of. And using Purchase Predictor, they were able to extend their core range 4 weeks earlier than last year and go out and grab that $1.8 million of headroom. The next example is in the printer and accessories category, where we were able to identify $550,000 of headroom. And we were able to do this by aligning a discount promotion to demand, in which case we moved it from the heavily traded Christmas period to 3 weeks later, at which point it was the first week back to school in Australia. The final example is in school uniforms, where we were able to identify $700,000 of headroom opportunity by breaking school uniforms down into 2 distinct missions. Knowing that there was demand for shoes and school shoes 2 weeks before that of clothes, which in a really practical sense meant they could extend the event and maximise the sales of their products. So, we're coming to the end of our webinar now. Just a little bit of practical information before we move to our Q&A. So Purchase Predictor prices start from £3,000 per month. And if you are interested, you can contact Isabel Harrison Hall at Summit Media. You use the code Purchase Predictor 19. We're able to offer a free trial and pilot, and you can start to understand the headroom in your business. So, we are on to the Q&A session of the webinar. So there is a question initially around the security of the platform and understanding how we make it secure by a retailer.
Yeah, so it's all of the data is held in secure cloud-based databases, and any retailer's own sales data is ring-fenced in its own separate database.
Good. Okay, we've got another question. Are the sales headroom charts specific to our company, or are they applied generically across the industry? Probably another one for you, Darren.
Yeah, so the platform becomes a lot more powerful when we ingest a retailer's specific sales data. So yes, it would be specific and bespoke to you as a specific retailer. We're also potentially building in some market level sizing as well, but obviously that's less informative, though still gives you an idea of what's out there to potentially go after.
Okay. And so just to clarify that, each retailer or each partner has their own bespoke view of the platform, which incorporates their sales data. So we've got another question here. Where does the online search intent data come from? Probably one for you, Darren.
Yeah, thanks. It's for those of you who don't know, Summit's history is very much in the digital marketing space. So through years and years of running paid search marketing for our clients, we've got a good handle of what search data is available. So it's across different search engine providers. And then we overlay our own special source and our own methodologies on top of that to convert it into the demand curves.
Okay, and one final question around how quickly it can be turned on. If you have any more questions, get them in now. We're right at the end.
Yeah, so in terms of getting the platform up and running, it depends on whether we're ingesting any external data sources, like a retailer's own sales data. But from the point where we've got all the data in one place, it's just a couple of days to get everything, all the algorithms run and all the access permissions set up. So yeah, fairly quick turnaround.
Okay, and one final question just come in. Is this for online teams only? I guess I can take that one. No, absolutely. It's for all teams, all commercial functions. So it isn't specifically online. We've got plenty of examples of online forecasting having a really distinct correlation and matching really tightly to offline sales. So customers who are looking for, whether it be barbecues, lawnmowers, bread makers, ice creams, any of those examples you've seen, whether you're looking for them online, it's highly likely that customers will also be looking for those products in the store environment also, whether that be through marketing or commercial channels. One final question again, just around, how do I know how much of the Headroom is affordable to me?
So yeah, good question. So our Headroom methodology is based on a retailer giving what we call their fair share of the market value. It's not the cap of what the market value is. In terms of what's affordable, it's probably a slightly different question that wouldn't necessarily be answered in the platform, but you'd obviously want to start to look at historic marketing activities and what's worked well for that individual retailer and what's going to drive the best return on investment. So it then becomes sort of a test and learn and a cyclical process.
Yeah, and absolutely. The data, whether it be search or sales, is fed back into the platform and updated regularly, so you can then start to apply that to your test and learn strategy with, what we thought was going to happen, what was forecasted to happen, and what actually did happen, and how much of those incremental sales you were able to go and grab.
And certainly from an M&S perspective, it wasn't about needing more marketing dollars. It was about when we spent those marketing dollars, it got a better return for us. So.
Absolutely. Okay, so the Q&A box is no longer flashing at our end, which is a good sign. I think hopefully we've been able to answer all your questions. So we will be following up with each of you individually, and just like to take the time to say, thanks very much for spending the afternoon with us, and hope you enjoyed the webinar and found it informative and useful. Okay, thanks very much, and enjoy the rest of your day.